And one final VDD plug. If you're in the Twin Cities, Minnesota area this coming Friday, not tomorrow, not like the 22nd, I mean NFL Draft Friday, so it'd be the 29th, come on down to the Poorhouse in Minneapolis for the Vikings Digital Diaries draft party. Appears that it's going to be off the chain, as the kids say. It will be my first, and I will, with the VikingsDigitalDiaries.com, and I will only be able to be in attendance for a very short period of time at the beginning of the evening. But the draft party officially starts at 6 o'clock p.m. Friday night, not Thursday night. We'll have the whole first round under our belts before our party. That Friday night at the Poorhouse, Minneapolis, starts at 6 o'clock. Confirmed guests that will be in attendance are six-time Pro Bowler, former Minnesota Viking Matt Blair, and current Minnesota Viking linebacker Edmund Robinson. So looking forward to seeing them, meeting them, and talking a little Vikings football with those guys this coming Friday. All right, now let's get to our hit opening segment here on the show. Let's just say it, everybody. 3, 2, 1. Balls on fire. What has got me, yours truly, Scotty Ball, the most on fire, the most fired up, the most heated up, whether it be positively or negatively? And if you paid attention to the overview, you would know that there are likely several topics that have me fairly fired up tonight, today, this week. And you would be correct. That's generally the case, but I think the intensity level was raised a little bit just with all the emotional factors in the last 24 hours for this week's show. So let's go. Let's see. Boy, we got, Twins are worthy. Prince and China are both worthy, but we're going to single them out later. I'm not really on fire, about that. Doesn't really work. WWE's a little boring. UFC, well, that's more of a rumor mill, balls juice type of stories for the most part. So for the most part, it leaves us with T-Wolves basketball and Minnesota Wild hockey. That's what we're choosing from here on this week's episode, for the honor of being the balls on fire topic. And boy, I'm going to stay true to me, and I'm going to show, a little bit of my black sheepness as far as a Minnesota resident is concerned. And I am not starting with the Minnesota Wild. That's right. The Minnesota Wild are not what has me the most fired up. What has me the most fired up is the Minnesota Timberwolves hiring their new head coach and president of basketball operations, both the same dude, Mr. Tom Thibodeau. If you recognize his name as a coach, it's most likely because he was the head coach of the Chicago Bulls not too long here ago, for about 5 years or so. They had a fairly ugly parting a year ago. He took this year off, and now he was one of the, if not the most coveted head coach available for the head coach, all the open head coaching positions in the NBA. And the Minnesota T-Wolves are the team that landed him. Now, here in Minnesota, and for the most part, I think, around the country and around the world, but especially here in Minnesota, everybody thinks that this is, or almost, I shouldn't say everybody, but it feels like almost everybody thinks this is the perfect, can't miss, without question, best decision and result that the Timberwolves could have hoped for. Well, I know that it's not everybody, not because I talk to people who, have that different opinion, but because I do not share that opinion. And I'm going to clarify over the next several minutes. Now, let me be very clear and upfront about this right out of the gate, okay? Because I don't want confusion on this. There's been a lot of confusion. The few comments I've put on the internet, there's been plenty of confusion as to what exactly I'm saying or not saying, because a lot of people on the internet are dumb. That's why. But for the record, I genuinely feel that the Tom Thibodeau hire, especially as head coach, not so much as president of basketball operations, but especially as head coach, was a good move for the Timberwolves. It was a undoubted improvement from what they had before and another step in the right direction. That being said, my stance on it is simply, for me, by my analysis, Tom Thibodeau wasn't the best choice possible to come in and coach this team and take over. And I also personally, and this is just a preference thing, the second part, but I just personally would have liked to seen the head coach and the president of basketball operations be two different people. I don't feel that one person can put the necessary time into doing both, because both have to be done simultaneously at some points throughout the year. And that's just simply not possible for a human being to literally be in the middle of coaching a basketball game and working president of basketball operation duties at the exact same time. Now, the one counter that a person could, throw out to that is relevant and may factor in, but I think it's overrated, is that Tom Thibodeau has nothing tying him down at all. Like, this guy eats, sleeps, breathes, and poops basketball. Basketball is his life. He has no wife. He has no girlfriend. He has no children. Every second of every day of this guy's life is basketball. So I think because of that, he's more likely to succeed to a greater extent at pulling off both of those duties simultaneously as others would if they were asked, to do the same thing. That being said, I don't think that he will do as good of a job as head coach as if he were just a head coach. I think having to do both will diminish his ability to do both just a little bit. But back to my main point of him not being my number one choice for the job, for the head coaching job specifically, and why. And ultimately, we're going to, in a roundabout way, bring it to, close with who I had as my number one choice and why I felt they were a better candidate than Tibbs. But Tibbs, for me, was no higher than 2 on my hopeful list, and I don't even know for sure that he was number 2. He was right up there with Mark Jackson, Scotty Brooks, who's going to be the coach of the Washington Wizards now. Mark Jackson got a job with, we'll check that out here in just a minute, and Jeff Van Gundy, who's been mostly doing commentary work the last couple of years, but big names in the NBA coaching world for whatever reasons. Those were all kind of the names being thrown about, and my number one guy isn't any of those names. But like I said, we'll get to him at the end. Let's focus on the guy they did actually hire, what his strengths are, first and foremost. We'll start out with positives, and then that's why and how he got hired. And then we'll bring that then to the negatives and where I feel he wasn't the best fit. Again, good fit, improvement, but not the absolute best guy we could have got. So, strengths of Tibbs as a coach, things we like about Tibbs. Well, first off, he has years, around 5, 6, somewhere in there. He has years of head coaching experience, winning head coaching experience with the Chicago Bulls in recent past. Now, granted, none of that resulted in a championship, but built and coached a competitive, relevant, winning team. So we like that. Specifically, when it comes to the more basketball on the court sides of it, specifically what he brings most to the table, other than a work ethic and a focus and a dedication and commitment to the team and to winning, which is huge. That's epic, something we haven't had here in Minnesota in a very long time. but he is considered a defensive guru, expert, specialist, genius, whatever word you want to use. He's a defense guy, and if you've watched the T-Wolves this past year or in recent years, period, you would know that their defense is atrocious. It's one of the worst in the NBA. Now, their offense actually this past season, post All-Star break, was a top 10 offense in the entire league. And at one point in time, it spent an entire month as the best offense in all of basketball. Yes, over teams like the Golden State Warriors. But all that offense over that period of time did not result in wins in the win column the way that players, the team, and fans would usually expect. So everybody was under the understanding that defense is our biggest weakness, and thus is the number one area of focus to improve on, and whoever is brought in, to take over should be someone that, there's evidence that they can accomplish that. And Tibbs, without question, checks that off the list, in my opinion, in those regards, looking at it strictly from a defensive improvement standpoint. Yes, Thibodeau was without question the best coaching candidate of anybody for the job. But that's just one element of the game. So we're almost to the negatives now. But let's close out on how Tibbs got the job. Make no mistake, this was an inside coup. This had been in the works for a while, possibly even as early as last year, before Flip passed away this year. Basically once KG got brought back to Minnesota and Flip was coaching on, temporary terms anyway, was only going to coach as long as he wanted to or had to, but there was no, plans to just coach indefinitely, as most coaches plan to coach their team indefinitely, but that wasn't the case with Flip here the last couple years when he was coaching before he sadly and tragically passed on. And I have heard rumblings and subscribed to the thought and belief myself that from almost day one of KG coming back, the hope and plans to recruit Tom Thibodeau as head coach of the Wolves were underway, because the only championship ring that Tom Thibodeau owns or can claim was one that he received as an assistant coach, not a head coach, an assistant coach of the Boston Celtics when KG was there and they won that championship. Boom. So, we know that KG was brought back for all kinds of, front office and, possibly even coaching staff, just all kinds of, upper level employment potential and opportunities here for as long as he desires. And knowing that, it's hard to believe that he wasn't a part of this decision. And then when you see the ties and connect the success and the personalities even, they're both very fiery, intense, tell you straight up how it is, no filter, live and die for their team in the game of basketball type of dudes. I just don't see how anyone could not, see Kevin Garnett, KG's initials, boldly stamped all over this move. And I'm as big of a KG fan as there has ever been and will ever be, for the record. I'm not saying I'm the biggest. I'm just saying I'm as big. Remember that, baby. But I don't know how I do know how I feel. I feel mixed about that right now, because like